Hello, welcome to Ubiquiti airMAX AC webinar. We'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out today, their busy day, to join us. Today, we'll be talking about airMAX AC, its features, share some case studies from our initial deployments, and finish with a QA session. Today's presenters will be Matt Hardy, and he's VP of Technology Applications for Ubiquiti, and he's based out of Atlanta. And I'm John So. I help out with special projects here, and I'm based out of the San Jose office. Today we have two guest speakers. The first is Peter Krantz. He's the owner and operator of Unwired, and he's based out in California. And we have Chuck Hogg, who's the owner and operator of Shelby Broadband. So before we get into the airMAX AC webinar, we want to talk about just airMAX as a platform and how well it's done. So up to this point, we have over 20 million airMAX capable radios deployed, and it's been a huge hit for Ubiquiti. And those 20+ million airMAX capable radios are serving hundreds of millions worldwide. And here's some examples. So the first is the British Royal Forces, and they use airMAX to provide Wi-Fi for all their soldiers in their barracks, and we're talking about tens of thousands of soldiers. The next is Inforta, and they're based in Russia, and they're growing 20% year over year, and they are completely airMAX. We're seeing a massive sales volume increase over the last 2 years in India. airMAX is also bringing internet to hundreds of students throughout the schools of Africa. Fashionet in Brazil has connected over 15,000 customers. And finally, C3 Presents and TourTech use airMAX to bring internet to Lollapalooza. And that's one of the largest music events in all of North America. And we're talking about hundreds and thousands of people. It's truly amazing. So today we'd like to talk about the next evolution of our platform, and that evolution is airMAX AC. And as you know, it operates on the 5 GHz spectrum, and it's capable of pumping out 450+ megabits per second of real throughput. It's really amazing. And we do this through our proprietary airMAX ASIC engine, as well as a new revolutionary filtering technology, and we call that AirPrism. It's capable of up to 30+ kilometers of range, and this is all managed through Air OS 7, our new firmware. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Matt Hardy, and he's going to go through the product line features, some of the software features, and then go through a demo as well. So Matt?
Thanks, JT. Hey guys, like JT said, I'm going to quickly go through some of the new features and benefits of the new airMAX AC product line. I'll quickly touch over some of the highlights. If there's anything that I missed or you have questions about, feel free to add those in the Q&A section on the Hangout screen, and we'll get to those after the presentation. Also, hopefully my microphone sounds good. Before the call, they said there was a little bit of interference, but hopefully we can get through this without any issues. First thing we're going to talk about, as many of you know if you've used our airMAX products before airMAX, a lot of wireless internet service providers use standard-based protocols to build their wireless networks, 802.11b, G, or A. And these standards-based protocols were built with the idea of indoor wireless in mind, with a lot of devices inside the same room, able to see each other, and handle all talking to the same access point within each other. When you get to outdoor wireless, where devices are separated by many miles, far away from the access point, these standard protocols don't work. So we went to the drawing board and completely rewrote the protocol used on our devices and called it airMAX, and built this for the purpose-based reason for outdoor wireless. With airMAX, the access point has full control over when each client talks, which client is talking, and which types of traffic that client is passing at that time. So with airMAX, we have basically zero wasted airtime, and it's a very efficient outdoor protocol. And all of the protocols that need to be prioritized are, there's a very high quality of service. You can prioritize different clients over other clients. So it's a very efficient protocol that's great for outdoor wireless. Okay. What's new with the AC products is, unlike the previous airMAX products, where all of the airMAX, the TDMA calculations, everything was done in software on the CPU of the device, we've now built our own custom ASIC solution. So a dedicated chip on the devices that handle all of the timing, all of the TDMA calculations, everything that has to do with calculating which traffic goes where happens in hardware now. So it's a lot higher performance, lower latency, improved scalability for clients, and overall, much better solution than doing everything in software like was before. With the new AC radios, we've also launched a new antenna line that we're calling the AC antennas. And the main goal of these is to greatly increase the density of your network. So a lot of people say with the previous airMAX networks, they perform well, but once you start getting a lot of devices very densely located, you start running into scalability issues. You can't get that many devices. So we've added a few more options. In the sector antennas, we've added a 45-degree sector, which allows up to 8 different antennas on one tower. And with the metal backing on these antennas and the higher front-to-back ratio, you can now more closely and densely co-locate these antennas and provide 360-degree coverage with a lot higher customer density count. And so far in our, I'm pretty much done with this, but so far in our field trials, we've seen really great performance with these new antennas. Additionally, the new AC products has a new feature which we're labeling AirPrism. We've also introduced this on the Unify line in the Unify Outdoor Plus radio, and in those over the last year we've seen great success with that product. We're now branding this AirPrism for the airMAX outdoor line, and what this product does is builds a dynamically set frequency filter that surrounds the channel that you're operating on, so that any other co-channel interference is completely blocked. And with the airMAX products, that's important. With the previous airMAX products, the radios have a filter that's built around the entire band that's being operated on, and in some cases that's not 100% ideal. For instance, with 5 gigahertz, the radios can operate anywhere from 5.2 gigahertz to 5.9 gigahertz, and there's a filter around those. The problem comes when you have multiple 5 gigahertz radios co-located near each other. Something on 5.7 gigahertz can still interfere with something on 5.8 gigahertz, even though they're on different frequencies, because the front-end filter isn't filtering those frequencies out. And sometimes it can overload the front-end receiver on the other radios, even though they're on different frequencies. So what AirPrism does is it takes any frequency that's not on the specific frequency and channel bit bandwidth that you're using on the local radio and completely blocks it out. And we believe that this is a revolutionary feature that will greatly improve co-location and allow you to scale your deployments a lot more densely than ever allowed before. So now we'll go into some of the software features. AirOS 7 was completely rewritten from the ground up. Everything from the airMAX protocol itself was completely rewritten to work on the new ASIC hardware that we introduced. So that airMAX on AirOS 7 is a lot more efficient and higher performing than previous airMAX protocol was. We've also rewritten the web interface completely using the latest web technologies. So we'll do a demo in a few minutes, but when you're using the AirOS 7 web interface, it's almost like using a native desktop application. It's that responsive and that powerful. So I'll show you that in a few minutes. I think one of the most important things, and from the early adopters that are currently using AirOS 7, one of the most important and well-received additions to the software are the new RF diagnostic utilities. Some of these things have never been available before for airMAX products. If you are familiar with airMAX, previously what we had to troubleshoot with was the noise floor, which kind of a running joke in the community was that it's always -96. It's not very useful. Now with airMAX or with airOS 7, we have the ability to see a few things. And I can show you a better picture of these in the demo, but we have now a constellation diagram with the new tools that we have available to us. We're able to show an actual picture of the constellation diagram. This is important because instead of just a noise value that you see with the constellation diagram, you can actually see the error vector magnitude, the amount of error that the radio is seeing. It's almost a visual way of looking at the binary translation from radio waves into this modulation. Once we get to the demo, I'll explain it in a bit more detail. We also have, if you can see at the bottom, there's a new chart that shows a few different things. Like I said previously, the noise floor is still there. It's the same as it was, but we've introduced a new value that customers can use for troubleshooting, which it evaluates each incoming wireless frame and can tell the error vector magnitude of each incoming received frame and add that to the noise floor and give you a real, actual, useful noise, which we call, I think in the web interface we call it interference plus noise. So we can tell you the actual interference that's happening at any given time, which obviously changes very frequently. And that interference plus noise value is what you can use compared to the signal value to give you a more accurate signal to noise ratio than we've been able to do in the past. Another thing that's been asked for a long time, and we've been working on this for a while, is a method that you can now run AirView even while radio is active. This is especially important for remote radios that you don't have physical access to the Ethernet side of the radio. If it's a CPE at a customer's house or the other end of a backhaul, you can log into that radio and run a real-time spectrum analyzer, which we call AirView, and see exactly what the RF environment looks like visually. And if you're not familiar with AirView, AirView is our spectrum analyzer software that is great for installation and planning as well as troubleshooting already existing RF links. And this lets you look at the complete spectrum in that environment and see what noise is there on which frequencies, how active the noise is, and how powerful that noise is, what level of interference it's going to cause you. Some of the improvements we've added in the new airOS 7 interface are, since we're using the latest technologies, we're able to enhance the previous tools we had. So you'll notice that the ping tool and speed test are a lot more responsive and a lot more accurate. We've also introduced a new test, the cable test, which has, hasn't been available for your troubleshooting in the past. And this allows you to tell things like if your cable is a little bit too long, you might start seeing Ethernet errors on that cable. Ethernet cables also have signal-to-noise ratios or errors, just like wireless, but we've never had that ability to troubleshoot that before. So now if you're having any kind of issues, you can look at the web interface and see immediately if there's a cable problem and just help you narrow down where the issues are happening. And of course, as everyone is aware, we're pretty price disruptive. So all of the software that we provide, including the embedded web interfaces on the devices, are completely free. No upfront costs, no licenses to upgrade later on to higher capacity. Everything is completely free. And then we'll quickly do a demo. JT has a demo set up in the Bay Area, so we'll use that. This is a live demo that has real customers on it. So we'll give you a sneak peek. This is a point-to-multipoint network that is currently serving real customers. And to get started, as you can see, the airOS 7 web interface is very responsive. You can see everything's updating very quickly. The constellation diagrams are updating a few times a second. as well as some of the other values. To just highlight a few of the features, you can see in the top right-hand corner is another utility or parameter that we've never been able to expose before. But with the new tools that we have, we can now give you the airtime percentage, which I think is going to be very valuable to wireless ISPs. What this does is tell you exactly how busy that device is, how much of its airtime is actually being used. This is kind of like a utilization value. So you can look at this and kind of tell if you're going to need to upgrade soon, depending on the number of clients you have. As you add more clients, this airtime value might start increasing, or if it's a backhaul that's starting to become overloaded, once it starts getting to 80 or 90%, you might need to start thinking about upgrading, whether increasing channel bandwidth or adding another radio. So I think that'll be very useful to customers. You can also see right below that the cable diagnostics values that I just talked about. You can see the signal to noise ratio of the cable as well as the cable length. Right below that, there's a new chart that we have, and I touched on this briefly. Actually, I haven't touched on this yet. So we've also just added new values called capacity. And if you're familiar with air fiber, we've had capacity available for air fiber for a while. With airMAX products, we've always shown the data rate, and then you kind of have to guess based on that modulation rate and the packet errors what this capacity is going to be. But now we've figured out how to introduce this capacity value, and on looking on that, you can see in this chart specifically the capacity is transmit 122 megabits, receive almost 80 megabits per second. And what this means is this is the actual throughput that the customer should be able to receive if they run tests across that network. So it's a very valuable indication of performance on that network. And if we go down to the next section, this is the station-specific information. Here you can see things like the specific capacity for that isolated client, very useful. And then right to the right of this is the constellation diagram. And in this case, this shows you which modulation is being used. You can see it switching between 64 QAM and 32 QAM and 16 QAM. So it's fluctuating based on the current environment of this radio. And what's interesting about the constellation diagram is we usually know what the modulation is currently set to, but with the constellation diagram we can actually see visually what kind of errors are happening at each of these subcarriers. So if you look closely, you see a lot of dots, and with the constellation diagram, what you want to see are very tight, dense dots right in the center of that. You can see on the right side the dots are all pretty tight, but on the left side, once it switches back to 64, you can see the dots are kind of all over the place, which indicates lots of errors, and that's why this link is fluctuating more than the one on the right, because of the errors. So very useful, just another tool that you can use to gauge the performance of your network and what's actually going on. If you scroll down, you can see the new signal noise and interference that we've made available for the AC products. You can see in this case the noise floor shows as negative 89 dBm. This is what you've always had available in the web interface. But now we're also able to detect interference on each incoming reception of wireless frames. So you can see the interference plus noise is right now negative 75. So we can take that negative 75 value and determine, based on the signal, the real-world signal to noise and interference ratio that can be used to determine what modulation should be available. And I think those are the main highlights of the web interface. The main tab has had a lot of work put into it, so I think that most of you will enjoy using this, and that's about all that I wanted to highlight from the web interface. So JT, I'll pass it back to you now, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to put in the Q&A section, and we can cover those at the end.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Matt. So thank you so much for showing us that demo. We're going to go back to our presentation. So at this point, I'm going to jump into the model comparison and break down what we're offering right now for our AC line. So let's start with access points. So we have 3 flavors of Rocket 5 AC. The first is the light. And the main difference between this one is it doesn't have air prism. When you go up to Rocket 5 AC point-to-point and Rocket 5 AC point-to-multipoint, I mean, the uses are very, very clear, but the difference is they both have air prism. We also have 3 flavors of antenna. The first is a rocket dish, and of course this is for your point-to-point applications, and this one has a gain of 31 dBi. And then we have 2 flavors of sector antenna, and the first has a gain of 21 dBi, and it covers 60 degrees. And the next is our sector antenna that covers 45 degrees of range and has a gain of 22 dBi. And then finally, let's go to our customer premise equipment, the CPEs, and we have, again, 3 flavors of this. And really, the main distinguishing factor between the 3 is how far do you need to go out from the tower. So the first is our nano beam, and has a gain of 19 dBi, and the range is about 15 kilometers. Next is our power beam series, and we have a power beam 5AC 500, and that one can reach a tower, touch a tower from 25 kilometers away, and that one has a gain of 27 dBi. And then finally, we have our power beam 5AC 620, and that one can reach out from 30 kilometers, and that one has a gain of 29 dBi. So right now we'd like to share some case studies, and the first person we have up is Peter Krantz, and he's the owner and operator of Unwired, and he's based out in California. So Peter, would you like to jump on?
Yeah, thanks, JT. So when Ubiquiti asked us to participate in the point-to-multipoint trial, my goal was really to throw the entire book at them. I chose one of our most difficult sites. You can see the view shed of it in the top of this slide. We have over 20 Ubiquiti access points on that site. We also have 2 other competitor towers very close to this tower. So really horrible noise floors, really almost impossible with the traditional Ubiquiti products to find open channels. So the question was, how is this AC product going to work in this environment? So we loaded up with 15 customers and started, we had a lot of different signal levels, some customers in the 70s, some customers in the 60s, some customers in the 50s. And what was really evident right away was that something had really changed with this new product. And running iPerf tests, we were getting basically triple the performance we were getting with the previous platform. And the latency spikes that we'd seen when our other software airMAX-based products were locking up due to high interference levels was gone. The hardware airMAX really seemed to be working. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So we found the new interface quite useful. I wanted to really touch on here the CIN bars, the CINR bars. Those give you a real-time view of what the signal-to-noise ratios are. And we found this really useful because you can see in this picture the signal-to-noise ratio average values are all sitting in one side around 20 and the other side around 25. But as we were installing test clusters, we'd run into ones where you'd see sporadic CINR values of like 5 and 10, and you'd see odd throughput with them, and you'd realize, oh, I have sporadic interference on the customer side, which traditionally was much more difficult to trace down. But here, I would see it immediately, and I could also see it in their graphs. We can move on to the next one. Also, you'll notice we managed to achieve some really nice modulation rates. In our iPerf results in this test environment, our worst customer with a negative 75, we were getting in real throughput 44 megs by 29 megs, and our best customers were getting 90 by 109 megabits per second iPerf results. So at least triple what we got with the previous platform. And then the next one, please. So once again, touching on this trial, we used a 20 megahertz channel. We had 15 customers of all types of antenna systems, distances, etc. And we found that the platform was really living up to its promise. That's all I have.
Thanks so much, Peter. All right, so next up we have Chuck Hogg, and he's the owner and operator of Shelby Broadband, and he's based out in Kentucky. Chuck?
All right, guys. First I just want to say thanks to Ubiquiti and the developers because during this beta phase, anytime there was an issue, the developers worked quickly to address all the issues, and we identified them late at night, and they seemed like they were working around the clock to address any kind of potential problems. So a little bit about our case scenario. This is a brand new site for us. It's a suburban location. All of the customers in this area are either a cable or an AT&T Uverse customer. So we knew that a challenge that we would have is being able to provide that 50 meg bandwidth to be able to compete with the existing providers was going to be a challenge with any other platform. So when Ubiquiti came to us and asked us to test this beta AC product, and we knew that this was an area that we had traditionally were planning to do a fiber to the home deployment, and we decided to give this AC platform a shot at doing wireless in an area where we have traditionally kind of planned to do fiber to the home, and it has worked out really, really well. For those of you that don't know, but my business partner Gerard DuPont, he's actually covered in this area, so his house is actually one of our customers. One of the things that we did was we knew we would have a challenge because people would traditionally want to go with a wireline type provider, and so we offered 3 months with free service and a free installation and no contracts or anything like that for this beta case. As we started signing up customers, the customer complaints were kind of similar to that you hear around the world of, I don't get the speed that I'm subscribing to with the cable TV or the Uverse platform that is also being offered. And one of the things that after signing people up, after we went through that 90-day period, we kind of followed up with everybody, and it was all of the customers were raving about performance. They were able to watch Netflix, Hulu, Xbox, PlayStation. All of those things worked well for them. We didn't have a whole bunch of issues with voice over IP or VPNs or things like that. There was a lot of people that were concerned about that initially. So all the platforms and everything that traditional customers are going to use for an internet service, they were using on this, and everything was working really, really well. We see about 0 to 2 milliseconds of latency per hop on the AC platform. Gerard was telling me some of his testing shows all the way back to our office here that he's getting typically 3 milliseconds or less in latency. So if we look at some of these slides, one of the things that we've really raved about that has been really, really good to see is the constellation diagrams, which you only used to be able to see on licensed gear. It's nice to see it kind of trickled down into the other platforms. The other part that Peter also addressed was the interference levels, being able to see the signal, the noise, and then the interference chart to show the historical peaks and interference was definitely a solid case for us. And when we would identify issues, we could go back and look at those graphs to be able to tell where the issues are. Performance-wise, most of our customers are less than 3 miles away from this access point. Like I said, this was a suburban deployment. Our testing in a 20 megahertz channel is actually right at about 135 megabit. The diagrams are 137 by 127. Those capacity isolated capacity diagrams that are shown there on the APs with TX and RX capacity limits are very close to being exactly what you get when you do a speed test. So when it says the TX and RX capacity is at 139 and 133, we usually test within a megabit or two of what we actually get out of those capacity limits. And it's nice to see all of these things change in real time. So you can see all the airtime being updated and all those types of values being updated on the APs that we didn't have before. So if you want to go to the next slide. All right, we also did a test on the point-to-point. Again, in here we used a 40 megahertz channel to get a little bit more bandwidth to the site. It's very, very stable. When comparing to other platforms, we didn't have really any of the issues on point-to-point. We're doing a 40 megahertz channel, and we're testing somewhere, we're getting between 250 to 260 megabit. We probably could get a little bit more, but we're probably hitting some type of CPU limits on when we're doing our bandwidth tests. Again, you get all the same nice features that and the multi-point for all the graphs and those types of things that you had and point-to-point. And again, some of the other values are traditional in airMAX and are easy to see. I think that's pretty much it for me.
Cool. Thanks so much, Chuck. So again, just a couple of awesome deployments from both Peter and Chuck. I mean, it's great to see that airMAX is living up to its billing. So at this point, I'd love to open it up to Q&A, and if you give us a moment, we're going to go ahead and get the question system going. So give me a few minutes, and I'm just going to quickly check through everything.
Hey JT, while you're checking, do you care if I I want to show quickly the real-time spectrum analyzer from mine?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, let me flip it over to you.
All right, hopefully everybody can see this okay. This is a test point-to-multipoint network I have here. One thing that I wanted to show is how responsive the new AirView tool is. If you open up AirView, you don't have to use Java anymore. You don't have to open up an external application, install Java. With the new HTML5 interface that we're using, AirView is built directly into the web interface. So you simply click a link, and it just shows up. Very easy to use, very rapid, very quick to update. So I think you guys will find this very, very useful. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Matt. All right, so let's start with our first question. So our first question is, have new SNMP OIDs been added to AirOS 7? We need to monitor noise, know of the connected customers, etc. So I think it's we need to monitor noise. Matt?
Yeah, I believe with at least with 7.1, which is in beta now, there is a custom SNMP MIB that has our own. We do support SNMP along with our own custom MIB that we've provided that has all of the relevant Ubiquiti airMAX diagnostic values.
Awesome, thanks. Our next question is from Victor, and his question is, hi, we have over 100 Rocket M5 sectors giving service to 3,000 plus users. That's awesome, good job. Can old CPEs like nanostations or nanobeams be able to connect to new AC devices in order to migrate them?
Currently, to launch AC, we did kind of a greenfield deployment like we did with the previous airMAX line. So currently, AC products will only work with other AC products because of the protocol was completely rewritten. We will have to, in order to support the older airMAX products, we will have to update those in order to be compatible. So that is something that we look at doing a little bit later on after the AC product has been shipping and is a little bit more mature and stable.
All right, thanks. Our next question is from Toughbook. And his question is there a time frame when DFS will be available on AC gear?
I know it's in progress now. Ben, maybe you have a more recent update, but I know it's currently being tested. And
yeah, I think last I've heard is we're talking the next few months when the DFS will be available for most models. Obviously, there's additional models that we're coming out with in the AC line, so those would be behind the ones that have already been released, but that's what we're looking at this point for the existing models that have been released.
Cool. And for those of you who don't know, Ben is our Sales of VP Development. He's on the call with us today to help out help us answer some questions in the Q&A session. All right, our next question. Our next question is, are there any plans to make AirOS 7 compatible with standard radio series, for example, NanoBeam M5?
No, the M series products, the previous products, will only work with AirOS version 5 currently. AirOS version 5 was written specifically for the new AC products, so it's a completely different hardware platform, and they're not compatible. So at this time, it's just version 5 for the M series products.
Cool. Our next one's from Mike Hammett, and his question is, when will GPS sync be available?
Hey Mike, how's it going? Ben, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, that's fine. So nothing to announce at this point as far as GPS. Obviously, we're always looking at different technologies and different things to improve performance. I would say AirPrism, with what we've done there, I think that'll provide a lot of tools for scalability. I know GPS is another one of those tools, but AirPrism is as far as co-location and competitive noise and those kind of things will provide you a great option. But at the same time, again, we are looking at different options. So nothing to announce at this point.
Cool, thank you. And since we're on the AirPrism, let's follow up with another question. So this is already part of the standard agenda, but can you please explain how AirPrism works again? Noise is noise. How can it simply be canceled out?
I went over this in the slides. I'm not sure when the question was asked, but AirPrism does not really cancel out noise on the frequency you're operating on. What AirPrism does is block out any noise on any frequencies you're not using. Since even though those are on different frequencies, it can still interfere with your radio's front-end receiver. So AirPrism completely blocks out, like a hard brick wall filter, any interference on the frequencies you're not using.
Thanks. So this next question, I'm actually going to open it up to Chuck and Peter. If you guys can jump in on this one, especially because you've done the real-world deployments, I think that'd be super helpful. So the question is, what is the real-world throughput? And we've never been able to get more than 50 megabits per second out of a Rocket M. So what have you seen with Rocket AC, guys?
So I published a story on the forums where I shared the results from this test access point along with all the iPerf results and the testing methodology. And so this is like, I think for a lot of people is going to be their worst case scenario. My worst customers, the ones that I would normally not install, I was getting between 30 and 45 megabits per second in a 20 megahertz channel on an interference heavy channel, by the way. And my best case scenario in that same environment, and these are customers in the mid 50s, I was getting between 90 and 110 megabits per second.
All right, so we did a couple different points of testing. We're overlooking about 200 to 300 homes within a 2.5 mile radius, so we're actually seeing a lot of noise from routers and things like that as well. We're truly seeing 135 megabit up and down in a 20 megahertz channel to the end user. Most of our clients are within 2 miles, I think, or 2 to 3 miles, so we're really close to the APs. The signals are fairly good. And a 40 megahertz channel, we're somewhere in the 250 to 260 range, and then we've seen 400 plus in an 80 megahertz channel. So we're seeing really good throughput, and probably the most throughput on an unlicensed frequency with this kind of device for point to multipoint. Probably the most throughput that we've seen from any other manufacturer. So it's working really well.
Nice. All right. Our next question is, let's go with this one. And Ben, this is probably one for you. When will we see AC point to multipoint available?
So AC multi-point is available now. So the initial Rocket 5 AC lights are available with point to multi-point now. They initially ship as point-to-point only, but with the software update, they are point to multi-point now. There is an additional, as you mentioned in your slides, there is an additional Rocket 5 AC point to multi-point with airPrism. That product will be announced shortly and start shipping shortly, which means we should start seeing shipments leave this month with the point to multi-point product with airPrism.
Cool, thanks a lot. And Felix Huber, you asked the same question, so I'm just going to delete yours, but hopefully that one answers your question. All right, so our next question is this. How about using old N antennas with the new radios? Sectors, rocket dishes, can we use them with the new AC?
So I'll go ahead and answer that one as well. Yeah, definitely you can. You can use the existing rocket dish. You can use the existing sectors. I would say, as much as possible where you can, using the higher performance AC sectors, just because you're gonna, have better performance, especially in high interference areas. And as you narrow your beam on your sectors, you're going to be limiting what that AP sees. So you'll, again, better performance. So yes, you can, as much as possible. I'd look at using those AC products.
Nice. Our next question is from Willie. His question is, will there be advanced L2 packet expansion on PPPoE authentication to do proper traffic shaping for VoIP, etc.?
This is something that I'm sure, as you're aware, we've looked at this over the last couple of years. We've had, after investigating and doing some experimenting, we've had different successes. Initially, we thought with the previous M series we would be able to, and then we had issues, and due to the PPP frames needing to arrive in the same order, we weren't able to rearrange things inside of the PPP session. So I'm not exactly sure if we'll be able to do that with the AC products, but we can definitely investigate that and see if there's anything different about the new products.
Cool, thanks, Matt. Our next question is, when will airPrism be available for sale? I guess he's referring to the APs.
So yeah, just kind of like mentioned earlier, we're looking at the announcement for the multi-point rocket shortly, with shipment starting this month.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, let me give me a moment to quickly go through the rest of these questions. And yeah, we do have about 15 more minutes, so I definitely want to be able to use that time for everybody. Okay, our next question is, does AC point-to-multipoint APs work on standard 48-volt 802.3 AF PoEs? Matt?
Sorry, Ben, do you know what ships with those? I'm actually not familiar with what comes in the box.
They're 24 volt.
Okay.
PPEs, APs.
All right, one from Josh Schmucker. Has and or when will the AC, much less the rest of the product line, be more workable with solar setups, specifically the high-end voltage of 30 to 31 VDC, as this is where the voltage can go during a sunny day and a solar controller?
I know a lot of customers use our products with solar now, so I may not be understanding the question properly. I know the products operate up to maybe 27 volts. I think the question may be are they going to be able to go higher than that? I'm not exactly sure. But I know a lot of customers successfully use it with solar now, so I'm not sure the best answer for this.
Okay. All right. and our next question, oh goodness, our next question is, in point to multipoint, how many customers are connected and how much bandwidth is carrying to each customer? And maybe Chuck and Peter, maybe that you can help out answer this question.
Well, for the unwired perspective, these are real customers, watching Netflix and all that, so it varies throughout the day. That particular test access point, we see average utilization levels of about 15 megabits per second on the access point, bursting to the highest. I think I've seen it with these customers, all generally residential, is 50 or 60 megabits per second when they all go crazy simultaneously.
How many customers connected? We've done different testing with different antennas and things like that, so we've had variations in our testing. I think at one point we were close to 12 or 13 on one sector, and typically the speeds that are in the capacity charts didn't change as we increased the amount of customers that we had. And most of the customers, when we see them utilizing the service, is in the evening, and we've seen multiple customers able to pull 40 plus megabit, no problem. And I think it's not because that's what they're hitting as their limit. That's probably just what they're using at the time for like Netflix or something like that. So yeah, we've seen aggregate throughput of 40 plus megabit, maintained without any issues.
Okay, and then I guess to answer the first part of the question, guys, like how many do you think you can put per AP?
That's a complicated question, I think. It kind of depends on your product offerings and how much you're willing to load. I don't think there's a hardware restriction that I've run into, but as far as what we want to offer our customers, I'm not sure on the AC platform, but I would guess I might be able to load them to 2 or 3 times more customers per access point than I was able to load my previous Ubiquiti platform, just based on the higher throughput numbers we're seeing with the platform.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, kind of same what Peter was saying. It depends on how much bandwidth you're selling to the customer and how much you want to oversell and what kind of limits you have set up for your personal business. But for the most part, we haven't seen a huge performance degradation as we add more customers yet. We have seen performance degradation when you add a customer that's got a bad signal, or if they're not aligned properly or something like that, and those are typically fixable by using maybe a little bit bigger antenna, or fixing their line of sight issues. And like I said before, our deployment's relatively close to the customer, and so our installers were typically used to having the panel or the antenna that they were using for their customer being somewhat flat, but we're 200-foot water tank not far away, so some of the antennas are having an up tilt at the customer side, and so the first time around when installing some of these customers, my installers didn't get that part just perfect, and we've had to go back and revisit some of those customers to make sure that both horizontal and vertical polarities are to the best that they can possibly be.
Cool. Thanks a lot, guys. All right, so Michael Poole, I know you asked a similar question. Your similar question was, have the number of clients per access points also increased from around 40 with Rocket M on AC? Hopefully that answers your question, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. And our next question is from Dinko, and his question is, when will IPv6 protocol be available?
Good question. I'm not exactly sure when it will be supported in the web interface. The underlying kernel supports it like airMAX version 5.5 did, but I'll have to check what the plan is for implementing that. I would imagine it would be fairly soon.
Cool, thanks. And from Mike Hammett, when will we see SFPs in tower radios?
Ben, any input on that? I know we don't have any current plans to add SFPs directly to the radio, but we are working with some accessories to help out and add some kind of SFP ports to the network.
Yeah, I think that answers it.
All right. From Mani, he's asking about AC wireless cards. Are we planning to release any, and and if we do, will they be compatible with different platforms like Microtech?
No, no plans for. I'm guessing the embedded cards. There's no plan for embedded AC cards.
All right. Our next question is from Christopher. His question is, the AC CPE lineup seems minimal currently. Will we see options in the 300 millimeter or 400 millimeter range for the NanoBeam M product line?
Yeah, you will see. As mentioned, these are some of the first CPEs to be released. There will be additional models similar to what you see now in the M line, where you have a 300 and a 400 millimeter dish. Power beam product.
Cool, thanks a lot, Ben. And then our next question is from Justin Voxframe. His question is, what is the current planned interoperability of the new AC line and the new M series radios? Will this be similar to the past M radio launch and the old 802.11 gear? This would give the ability to move point-to-multipoint access points to AC and slowly convert M customers.
Yeah, Matt touched on this a little bit already, but the plan is to make sure, obviously with the new platform, you want to make sure you're getting the best performance out of AC first, which is what we're doing, and then we'll have the ability to, we understand that, carriers are, the providers, the WIFs are going to want to transition, and there's got to be a path for that. So we'll work on the backwards compatibility, and that's already started. Hopefully we'll have an update on that as far as timeline goes in the next few weeks. But it is definitely planned.
Cool. And then Michael S. Taylor, Matt, I know you touched upon this, but maybe just following up for Michael S. Taylor here. He still doesn't understand the constellation diagrams. Could you explain it one more time, please?
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated topic to discuss in a short amount of time. We do have a YouTube video that describes that in more detail. So if you want to check that out, I think it would be a little bit more helpful than me trying to explain it now. And then we also have a few hours that we cover this and what it's useful for in our training program. But basically, it's just a visual way to see how the radio waves are converted into binary and what kind of error vector magnitude you see on each subcarrier. So more like a visual way to see the signal-to-noise ratio, how many errors are happening in real time.
All right, and we have about 6-7 minutes left, so we're going to answer maybe about 3 to 5 more questions, and then we're going to finish everything off. So our next question is from Roger. Will 900 frequency be offered in AC products?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and answer that one. So at this time, there are no plans for an AC product in 900 megahertz. I don't see it with that frequency. Maybe things will change, but at this stage, I don't see us planning or us going in that direction.
Okay, and then I think there's a variation on this question from Christopher. Aside from 900 megahertz, how about 2.4 and 365?
So 2.4, yes, there are plans there. 365 is still up in the air.
All right, and then for Bento, you asked that question. Hopefully that will answer yours, so I'm going to go ahead and delete your question. And then our next question is from Willie. Willie asks, does NanoBeam AC have AirPrism tech implemented? And since we're on that, let's also ask, does PowerBeam have it as well?
So the answer to that is no. The CPEs do not have AirPrism built in. The two products that have AirPrism, the two that have them are the Rocket 5 AC point-to-point and the Rocket 5 AC point-to-multipoint. Those are the only two products at this stage that have AirPrism.
All right, thank you. And then our next question is from Greg Gooden. He asks, When will air control be updated to support AC products?
So I see a few questions about air control. Air control 2 has stopped development. We're currently actively working on airCRM. airCRM is the new management platform that we just announced early December. So if you want to try that out, those do support the AC products already, and we'll soon be adding AirFiber this month, as well as ToughSwitch and EdgeRouter soon after that.
All right, and then I guess a companion question to this is, what is the benefit of AirPrism if the CPE does not have this technology as well?
Well, the main idea is on a tower, you have a lot of high-power devices nearby each other. So you may have 4, 8 base station access points all in the same few feet from each other. And when you have radios that high power near each other, the benefit you get from AirPrism is really great. You can completely block out the radio transmissions from those nearby high power access points, which otherwise would overload the receiver and cause a lot of errors. On a customer's house, it's not likely that you'll have those high power interferences right next to the radio. So the CPE should be pointed directly at the access point that it's connected to. Other nearby frequency interferences are not as great to cause an issue when the CPE is sitting by itself.
All right, and then we'll finish off with one last question. So the question is, oops, and it just jumped away from me. This is from Nick Bright, and Nick Bright asks, can AirView be run remotely?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I quickly touched on when we were talking about the new AirView tool. We do have the ability now to have an all-time running AirView. It's I think we call it persistent spectrum analysis. It's always running in the background. Even if the radio is currently working, you can run AirView and it will not interfere with the current radio link. So if it's a remote device on the CPE on a customer's house or the remote side of a base station, AirView will still work. You can still use it to see the nearby interference and what the RF environment looks like.
All right. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank Matt, Hardy, Ben for joining the call. I especially want to thank our guest speakers, Chuck Hogg and Peter. Thank you both so much for joining us, sharing your case studies with us. And for all of you out there, if we didn't answer your question, feel free to email us at sales@ubnt.com. We'll get right back to you as soon as possible. And for more awesome airMAX stories and future airMAX AC stories, feel free to visit us at community.ubnt.com. Again, thank you so much for your time. We know your time is valuable, and we hope that this has been helpful. Thank you so much.